Leadership today isn't about titles, it's about navigating complexity in a world moving faster than institutions can adapt. Very few people have seen such complexity from as many angles as my guest today. Over 35 years of experience in US and the Middle East. And during your term, KPMG grew a lot, more than 55% revenue increase.
If you work on the brand, if you work on the people, and if you work on the governance, success will come. Integrity is the only policy, or honesty is the only policy. That was my dad every day, every morning. At age 14, I decided I want to go to the US. And that was, 50 years ago?
Then became the CEO of KPMG.
If you put your mind to it, you can do it. Early part of your career, you concentrate on your achievements, and your titles, and your financials. And when you move up, you learn how you need to work on your legacy. A lot of us, we want to become leaders.
We love the title. Would you say Big Fours have reached a stage of too big to fail?
You shouldn't have 150 partners.
There were rumors that, so what happened? Leadership today isn't about titles. It's about navigating complexity in a world moving faster than institutions can adapt. Governance frameworks are being stress tested. Trust in large systems is under pressure. And leaders are forced to make high impact decisions under intense scrutiny. Very few people have seen such complexity from as many angles as my guest today. Over 35 years of experience in US and the Middle East. He has led teams, built practices, steered organizations through growth and turbulence, and today focuses his time on shaping better leaders and better systems. This conversation isn't about titles. It's about wisdom earned from a lifetime inside the engine room of transformation. Today, my guest, Nader. Nader, thank you so much for being here. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for being here.
Suraj, good morning. And really thank you for inviting me to this conversation. And thank you for your wonderful introduction. Hopefully we can live up through it through the conversation.
I'm sure. So, Nader, I want to start from a bit start, right? And you've spoken about this. You've been deeply into horse riding. And I just wanted to understand, because you said this, that what it's taught you about discipline and responsibility, and how it shaped you in the future and when you led organizations. So why horse riding was so important to you and how it shaped you? I just wanted to understand that.
Animals in general, and horses for me in particular, mean a great deal. With horses, I started riding at a very early age. And it taught me how to connect with animals and be able to communicate in a language that we don't understand. So the learning part of it was the exciting part. Usually I would not go ahead and admit that I was a really lousy soccer player or a football player, if you will, when I was young. And I wanted to depart away from everybody that played that game all the time. And this is why I chose horseback riding. But it taught me a lot. And actually, in leadership aspects today, when you reflect on it, you find that you're dealing with a 700-pound animal that doesn't speak your language. You don't understand their mood. And you have to direct them how to go, particularly in the sport that I'm in, which is show jumping. And you have to be able to let them know where you're going. They have to trust you, and you have to communicate with them. And gosh, there is no better way to learn how to lead than that. And if you learn it at an early stage, you're very lucky. That's my experience with horseback riding.
You have acknowledged that throughout your journey, the role of mentors have been really important. And so just wanted to understand how they shaped your journey Who were your mentors? And particularly for the younger group today, as a learning, why are these mentors so important to shape you?
Like I'm in the profession of professional services and consulting, so I'll speak in that context, if you will. Nobody really wakes up and say, I want to become a professional service individual or a consultant. But you look at your entire journey and you grow into it, kind of. I was very lucky to grow in a family that taught us two values: integrity. Integrity is the only policy, or honesty is the only policy. That was my dad every day, every morning. But also, it was hard work and applying yourself and learning and education. Those are the core values. We grew up with them when we were very young. At a very early age in my career, at a very early age in my life, in fact, maybe I was 8th or 9th grade, I've decided that learning is a key part of my life. Because we learned that learning is the only way up, or you grow up. So I've decided, and I start searching, that I want to learn and learn more. And at age 14, I decided I want to go to the US. And that was 50 years ago? 45 years ago?
Not common at that time to go
Not
to
common,
US.
not at
Especially
all.
from the region, we won't see many people going to US, right?
Absolutely. And I don't think my parents took that very lightly or nicely, if you will. And I started my research and I found out that the best learning at the time was happening in the US. Then I deeper search, I found that the northeast of the US was the best part, where they had the best universities. And then I learned that I need to study engineering. So I came from an engineering background. And this coming together, when I went to the US, after a lot of convincing to my parents, I found out that here at 18, you need to learn a new language. You need to become a lot more responsible for yourself and your life and financials and all the things that you manage. You move away from your comfort zone
Yeah.
that you lived throughout and you could have relied on. So having lived at your home, and in our culture, you live at home. You don't go live by yourself when you're 18. So that kind of prepared me to become more have a lot more curiosity, if you will, and continue to search for challenges and solve problems. You know, it comes in my career questions a lot of time. A lot of people ask me immediately about, what did you do? How did you get into professional services?
That was my next question.
That's your next question. But I want to tell you something that doesn't really pop up in my career, which when I graduated from college in the US from Northeastern as an engineer, I was very lucky to get picked up by UPS and work for UPS, which is an incredible learning ground for me at the time. They taught me perseverance, accuracy, accountability, integrity, all the things you want to learn. So, look, I've been very lucky in my career to have had many good sponsors, coaches, managers, and leaders that not only taught me how to learn technically, but also helped me build my character.
But if I were to say your one learning which you thought really stayed with you, which you think you wouldn't have got staying here 45 years back. Now this is a totally different world, but 45 years back it was a totally different world. What was that? Which you
My desire to problem solving. I love the solving for the unknown, the everyday challenges, and the solution. you know. And in consulting, particularly, and in professional services, there is no better environment. You know, you every day you have a new challenge, a new client, a new situation. I'll speak again for the professional services because this is where I come from. But yeah, problem solving is the thing that really drove me, at least in the beginning.
But how did the transition happen into consulting, right? You were in UPS, you went into consulting, you were in Deloitte then. How did that transition happen? I know you like problem solving, but then transitioning from an industry to a consulting environment, how did that move? Or what was your calling in terms of?
I just let me rewind a little bit. You know, I studied industrial engineering. I didn't study electrical engineering or mechanical engineering, industrial engineering. And at the time, 45 years ago, it was really not very well known either. It is the part of the business that understand technical issues and able to deal with management. So when you study that, that kind of puts you in between what is the problem and how do you manage this. So that kind of, I don't want to say came by accident, but that's really the education I received. And when I graduated and worked for UPS, there was a lot of daily problem solving. And I was very lucky. And UPS actually put me through a graduate school, and they sent me to Columbia University to do a graduate program. And that kind of the mentorship and leadership that I had. And upon I finished that, they said, the year before that, and I really don't want to brag about this, I'm more bragging about UPS and what an incredible organization. They said I was elected as the engineer of the year that year. And they say, you're going to the head office. So they moved me from New York to Atlanta to work for the head office. At the head office, and this is where the transition started to happen, it was a lot fancier, a lot more complex, bigger problems. And I start having a lot of exposure to a lot of consultants at the head office. And quite honestly, I thought this is a slightly more challenge to problem solving, because you're not just solving for your industry, but rather you're solving for multiple industry.
Okay.
And this is in the early 90s when I decided that I want to switch and work for Deloitte in the US. And I was very lucky to have had that opportunity and work for Deloitte.
Tell us about any specific assignment or a client situation which you dealt with, which made you realize, oh, I'm actually good at this, or I'm actually good at problem solving, right? That was your calling, but a real life situation. Tell us about it, that you finally realize, yes, this is something for me. Now I'm here at the right place.
The story that it always stays with me, and I tell my young kids about this, is I was hired by Deloitte to become a logistic and transport consultant because I had UPS transportation industry. But the industry, how it dealt with transportation, was different than UPS. Was a small package where the industry, when it deals with transportation, it deals with truckloads, it deals with bigger transportation and logistics issues and warehousing. And at Deloitte at the US, it was actually a really booming industry to move the retail sector into supply chain, logistics, and technology. So the experience here, I was brought into a very global household client to implement a high technology solution done by Oracle at the time. Oracle was the background where it was still blue screens in my days. And I'm not a technology guy. To do it on a transportation system that called Managistic that I was sent to train. And then I was supposed to implement this for one of the world's largest manufacturers, retailers in the world. And it took a lot of hard nights and a lot of work and a lot of experience and a lot of courage and a lot of support from my partners and directors at the time and the clients. And God willing, we implemented that system in about 9 months at the time. And it stays with me because I remember one time I landed in the airport at 7 a.m., drove to the client site, start working on this engagement. And before one of the user testing, I left the next morning at 6 a.m. And I really wasn't tired.
You really enjoyed
I
it.
really wasn't tired at all. And when I left, it was my car was snowed in. I couldn't find my car in the parking lot because it was by 7 o'clock. A lot of people start showing. So this is the experience: is the perseverance and the courage that you have. That yes, you can learn. Yes, you can find out. Yes, you can ask others to help you. And if you put your mind to it, you can do it. This is the experience that really stays with me most of my life.
And from Deloitte, you moved to KPMG, then became the CEO of KPMG. Planned move, unplanned? How did it happen?
Planned and planned. Look, I worked for Deloitte for a long period of time. I started in the US. And there, where I was very lucky to have a lot of mentors and a lot of good people. That was really the ground for me to learn how to have confidence in myself, the trust to solve bigger problems, and be able to communicate with my team. And then I moved to the Middle East and worked for Deloitte Middle East later on. And it was, again, fantastic because now I can communicate between East and West, and did very well at Deloitte in the Middle East. We did some fantastic projects and helped government transform themselves and their financials. Not to get technical, but we moved states from cash to accrual systems, and we involved 16, 18 ministries at the time, and that was huge. And if you didn't have the courage to do it, you would not do it. And I've risen through the rank through hard work, and I became a partner and continue working. I was very happy, and I loved Deloitte. I still love Deloitte. But I was a line partner, if you will, at the time. And I did get a call from KPMG. To make a long story short, they say, we want you to come and do similar to what you did. And I had no plan to leave. But the offer at the time, and I mean not the financial offer, but the offer itself was incredible. Because you are 1 in 1,000 partners. And now I'm being asked to become the head of management consulting at a practice that wasn't doing well, wasn't profitable, and needed a lot of rebuild. And I love it because when I met with the chairman and the COO at the time, it was obvious that this is something I can do, because I know I can do it. I've done it at a smaller scale earlier in my career, and I can do it. But also, look, you have to think that early part of your career, you concentrate on your achievements and your titles and your financials. And when you move up, you learn how you need to work on your legacy. You want to work on your building other leaders. And you always knew and read about this and believed in this, but this is an opportunity to really go up and become the head of management consulting. And this is why I did it, to be honest with you. And it was a fantastic experience because I was given a tremendous amount of responsibilities. And we were able to do it and do it well, and it became very successful, and it really gave me that confidence at bigger problems to solve and say yes to leadership positions. Because look, a lot of us, we want to become leaders.
As
And
titles. We love the titles.
we love the titles and we want to, and I think we can, but sometime at the last minute we sit back and we panic and we worry. I did have a lot of worries, but I also had a lot of confidence, because you can fix it. You can fix it, really. I mean, and if you make some mistakes, you can correct them and get up and try again. So that's really what allowed me to transition from one great firm to another great firm. And I won't say I had a better experience in one firm than the others. I'm not being diplomatic here. I'm being truthful. You know, a lot of my clients ask, and I'm going off the subject for a little bit. A lot of people ask, a lot of clients say, which one is a better firm? And you say, well, look, these are great firms. There is no better firms. I'd like to tell you we're a better firm or they are a better firm, but there is no. Really, all these firms are tremendous firms. You're talking
The top of the line.
70 billion, 60
Correct.
billion, 50 billion, 40 billion. You are a huge organization that spend a lot of money and a lot of time to educate the public, your people, your partners, to improve your service offering and solutions. So they're all great firms. But really what makes one firm great than the other is the ability for you to build that network with the people that you work with and with your client, and the ability to communicate with them that why you are better. So they trust you, because it's the business of trust. This is the business of trust. We all look the same. We all speak the same. All our presentations are almost very similar.
Correct.
Very hard for the client to distinguish between the big four. But she's looking at you to see, could I trust this individual? I know this project will go through issues, but can I trust this individual when the ships are down? This team will pick up and make sure it goes. And this is a classic case, in my opinion.
And then you became the CEO, a very big thing. So again, by chance or by a planned way of, or you wanted to become a CEO? I mean, just to understand.
Did I want to become a CEO? Oh my God, I never dreamt about being a CEO. I thought about being a CEO, but I thought it was a nice thing to think about, okay? Look, there's a lot of good people in these organizations, and they sit down and they look at you and they look at the way you grew up in the firm and how you managed, how you navigated through complexity, did you deal with people. And after 2 years, or less than 2 years, at KPMG Lower Gulf, because I worked for multiple offices of KPMG in the region, the previous chairman and CEO was a chairman and CEO for, God knows, 20, 25 years, 30 years, a long time. For many reasons, including age and the need to change, they held for the first time a very rigorous selection program. And they've asked the entire group.
It was fair and transparent selection process, or?
It was fair and transparent. I think it was fair and transparent. I think it was very fair and transparent, because there were 3 candidates at the end that had been put through a process where there was a global third-party organization, HR organization. There was a legal firm. There was there was a representative of EMA, chairman and office for the region. There was a representative of, at the time it was MISA, chairman and representative. And there were two independent board members that have gone through this election. And it was to my surprise that I was selected as the... Of course, that comes again to, it got the endorsement of this committee. It was shared with the chairman. The chairman accepted it and shared it with the partners. And the partners have agreed to it. And this is how it happens the first time around. Yes.
And during your term, KPMG grew a lot. I think so, more than 55% revenue increase. So what changes did you make that, 55% cannot be, it has to be a planned growth, or there were some structural reforms you made, which led to this growth. What did you do? Because you would have seen, you were in KPMG for 7-8 years before you became the CEO, right? You would have seen some changes or some gaps. What did you do, your agenda, what did you do which led KPMG to become a large firm or grew so well in terms of?
Yeah, we can talk about this because, I served multiple roles at the leadership at KPMG, from KPMG Lower Gulf to KPMG MISA to KPMG MISAC. So there were multiple roles. But here at the beginning, I'll tell you, KPMG is a great firm. It's a fantastic firm. But it was always underplaying its role, at least in the region. And partially for, look, and I really want to be, my intention here of sharing this information is to educate us and to educate others. It was a leadership that did a very good job in the past, knowing what we had in the past, and grow the firm and build network and relationship. But when you are leading an organization for 20 or 30 years, I don't know how to say this diplomatically, but things become stale.
Yeah.
And you will not see things the way you should be able to see them. And maybe you don't have the same hunger to improve. And so for me, that sets me up, because I love the firm, I love the culture, I loved what I've seen. And we are here in the UAE, and there's a tremendous amount of opportunity for growth, for transformation, for opportunities. And you say, I can take this. For example, we've ignored the public sector for a long time. You can't ignore the public sector at an economy where it's a public sector driven economy. Let's understand that. You cannot ignore the energy sector when it's an energy driven sector. You cannot ignore the healthcare, because now we're building a lot of healthcare and education. So there were a lot of sectors that were ignored, and knowing that you can penetrate those sectors and work with those sectors, it'll make a huge difference. So here, for me, it was, again, if you work on the brand, if you work on the people, and if you work on the governance, success will come. Okay? So it wasn't really, it was clear, let's just put it, what are the things you need to work on?
And still the region, you would say, as an outsider, it may seem culturally the same, but there's still cultural differences within the region as well, right? So how did you manage that? Or do you think it's we're okay to see from an outside lens that it's quite same or similar?
Look, I mean, I've worked globally, I've worked regionally, I've worked locally, and you have to understand and appreciate that people are different and cultures are different. Even if they are next door neighbor, they're slightly different. Again, you just have to learn that instead of directing too many people, when I became the chairman of MISA, it was actually quite difficult to understand how you manage this complex operation when you moved from having 40 partners to being somewhat responsible for 1,000 partners and a lot more revenue. Though at a chairmanship, you're more of a director rather than you are a CEO here. And you're sitting with a lot of smart people at that board. So they also understand their business. So it's not so difficult. And you've known them through your career, and at least in the past 6, 7, 8, 9 years, you've known them. So you know how to work with them. But you have to appreciate that you no longer just directing. You actually need to listen to people a lot more, to what they have, what they need to say. And that became very clear when we grew from 7 odd countries in the MISA to growing to almost 14 in the MISAC. Okay, that it's really communication and listening and trusting the other individuals and building that good relationship so they trust you, so they can share with you what are the issues that they are facing. And you need time to do it. So yes, in fact, I would say the number one is listening to others rather than telling them what to do.
Since they're senior people as well, it's not that
Senior, smart.
yeah. But still, let's say a partnership firm setup, generally we see partners come with, I would say, strong personalities, each individual. So what was the hardest part dealing with partners? Because now you're dealing with a huge number of partners instead of just being a head of management consulting. You have an audit partner on the audit team under you. You have a tax team under you. You have a full advisory team under you. So how would you deal? I know listening is an important part, but how would you deal?
So look. I think we're somewhat mixing and matching between my CEO, chairman of the Lower Gulf for KPMG, and my role as MISAC. So I need to bring that a little bit closer together. And my biggest experience as a chief executive is for the Lower Gulf here. Look, again, we've talked about the selection/election process. And at the time, it was clear to me, because I presented to that committee what ought to get done in my next 4 or 5 years. What would I do? Why should I be selected or elected to run that job? How could they trust me? And look, for me, it was very clear that yes, we're changing to a fresher model, if you will. But at the end of the day, we are focusing on people, we're focusing on market, we're focusing on governance, and we're focusing on growth. Those were and also renewing the organization. Because look, stale management comes from stale infrastructure also. So we knew we had to work on the infrastructure. Those were the elements that I really wanted to focus on. And you asked me about the partners and challenging how you manage a handful amount of partners to a larger amount of partners, from management consulting to audit and tax. And I think you're politely asking, you're an engineer, you're a management consultant, you don't know anything about audit and tax. And the fact of the matter is, you do. You do know a little bit. Yeah, you're not a certified public accountant. You're not a certified tax professional. But you've been around those conversations. And if you bring the right people to listen to them, they share with you and you trust them and you hold them accountable, things will get done.
So obviously you did your term, and then you have mentioned somewhere CEO elections and partners can be partnerships can be contentious. I mean, there were rumors that, there were controversy about your extension of your role as being a CEO. So what happened? I mean, why did this issue come up? I know dealing with, and it's an extension from my previous question that, dealing with people, dealing with so many partners. So what happened?
Look, just to continue with the previous questions as well, you said the firm grew at 55%. I wanted to say that we put a strategy together with the board and we shared it with all the partners that we want to double our revenue, double our people. And when I say people here, it's very important in our business. We mean partners and we mean staff as well.
Correct.
And so we want to double our people, we want to double our staff, and we want to focus on quality, we want to focus on governance, and we want to focus on growth, and we want to focus on branding, and we want to focus on renewing our infrastructure. That's what we really wanted to do. And in hindsight, maybe that was a tall order, 7 key strategic issues that you need to work on that got the blessing of the entire partnership, because there was a desire. These partners and staff are very proud of the place that they work with, and they wanted to grow and they wanted to become better and become at the top. So our vision at the time was, how can we become the best and most trusted firm in the region, or at least in the lower Gulf? And then we came up with those 7 strategic pillars, if you will, from which we had our own objectives to see how we're going to do this. And we shared them with the partners. And so I mentioned when you double your revenue, you double the number of partners, you double the number of staff, you change your entire technology infrastructure, office infrastructure, change the governance of the firm. That's a lot to do. And some people may not accept the change.
Like people are averse to change. It's like...
Some people may not. Especially, look, you say you want to share your story, and you share your story. You want to share the plan, and you share the plan. Then you find out that you're growing at a rate that is huge. So there's a lot of newcomers. And so the strategy is not brewing at the right time. So here, again, we brought too many changes, all necessary changes. In my humble opinion, they all need to get done yesterday, to do them in 4 years. And that was a little bit too much for some people. And it's interesting because it was never really clear that it was too much, because we felt it was if we are fighting for the same mission. So, I think too much in a shorter
Too
period.
fast, yeah.
Too fast.
So I want to talk about Abraaj. I mean, maybe not just more from a conceptual level. Everyone knows about the high-profile audit failure, right? I know it's in court and a huge penalty. I think so, 230 plus million USD as a penalty. What's your view, about the failure? Was it a system failure, a governance failure, just a plain something? Your opinion, and I know some you don't want to name because it's still in court, but the penalty is so huge that obviously it rocks KPMG as such.
Look, I'm really, and I'll be very frank and open. I'm not in a position to talk about this for multiple reasons. Not because I can't. I can't because I am not involved on where really the case is today. I can't because it's not right when it's still being debated to discuss, because the case is still happening. And I don't want to come across coward, but I want to say to you that this happened on a case that happened 2 or 3 years before I even came to the lower Gulf and before I became a CEO. So it was part of the previous era, if you will. And look, for me, I mean, I'm here at the helm of the firm, and I cannot duck down and say I'm not responsible. So we decided to address this by bringing the wider firm involvement, the regional firms, at the European level as well, the EMA level. We brought the best professional legal team to help us understand, and also multiple third parties to help us address this situation. So I think it's very unfortunate because the business at the time was going through, the entire business was going through a lot of governance and scrutiny, and there was multiple cases on multiple firms that had similar issues, maybe not to the same magnitude regionally as to this particular case. And it was rightfully so. I mean, you need to address your governance. So we addressed our governance. We brought the best parties. We sat down and we sat with the regulators, and we shared everything we can at the time. And I had retired from the firm before the judgment really came out, if I recall correctly, at the time.
Do you think Big Fours have reached a stage where they are too big to fail? And the reason why I'm saying is the profession is going through huge scrutiny. I mean, let's take a few examples, right? We saw what happened in Australia with the public sector practice of PwC. We know what happened with Wirecard EY in Germany. We know the exam cheating case in US. We know what happened with the Gupta brother case in South Africa. So I'm taking multi-region and so on, right? Have they reached a stage of becoming too big to fail? Because I'm going back a bit. Let's talk about Anderson, Arthur Anderson. 25 years back, Enron happened and Anderson collapsed. But obviously they were not at the size at that economy. But today you said yourself 60 billion, 50 billion, 70 billion. It's so big. So what's your view? Why is it happening all across? And why do you think this is happening? And again is it happening? Is it because now there's so many people to manage that it's just impossible to have structures around it? And obviously you will have these. I mean, what's your thought process across the firms?
I never looked at it from this angle, to be honest with you. And maybe many people would want you to say yes, but the fact of the matter, I don't believe so. Because there are again, these firms are run very well. Mistakes do happen. Not always all the mistakes are the firm mistake. There is a series of issues that could happen to lead to a significant failures of this size. But you also need to understand that the business environment has been changing. Technology is becoming part of it. The change in the diversity of products and services and the financial instrument being used are also different. Regulators are changing, and rightfully so. Firms are changing and improving their governance and structure and education and integrities and entire value system, often reviewing. But sometimes these mistakes, unfortunately, do happen. What I'll share is usually I would like to keep this to myself, but I'll share it with you because you're asking me, and hopefully we are educating whoever is going to listen to this. I think today there is a tremendous amount of emphasis on governance, and we're talking about the audit side of the business here. But in a nutshell, you cannot continue to do audits the same way you did audits in the 90s or even in the 2000s. Today, with technology, you ought to be able to say, how can I cover a larger amount of data to come up with a greater level of certainty and be able to do it at a more economical way? So those are the fundamental questions. I think a lot of firms, to the fairness of the industry, they're investing a lot in technology. I haven't seen much, to be honest with you, done. Okay. And I still think this will pause a lot with a lot of global CEOs driving their firms to do audit with a lot of technology to cover larger amount of data, to be able to have a greater level of certainty. And that's a question that they're asking themselves. But again, I can't give you a percentage of, 20% or 80%, although all the firms claim that they have all this incredible technology to do it. Again, I'm not quite sure, at least in the past 2.5 years, 3 years, I really can't tell you. But I know there is a lot of investment. This is an opportunity for the new generation of firms to be able to say, yes, we can do this a lot better, a lot safer, and a lot more economical. That's one issue. The second issue is a huge controversial point. Audit partners, they need to audit their clients, and they need to be very involved in the business of their clients in this business. They need to understand them. They need to understand their business. They need to understand the deficiency. They need to build a relationship so they can really understand what in between the line. We cannot say they gave us the wrong information, and we cannot tell them that. Because we could always sit down and say, look, we analyze or we audit what you give us. And that's fine, okay? But today, the community is asking for a lot more than you give us this, and we give you what could have happened, should have happened, would have happened. But the audit partners are under tremendous amount of revenue responsibilities. And they're also being paid a tremendous amount of money in this business. This is public information. It's not like I'm sharing, and we hear, the average partner earns this much, and I think that's dangerous. You can't have a partner with 50 clients or 100 clients that you audit, regardless of how you interpret it yourself. But I have 3 other partners working underneath me on this, and 2 directors on that, and yes, we can. You can't. Keep it simple. You're one partner. You report the revenue on 150 clients. You're not reviewing the 140 clients. And I think that's a serious issue. And you haven't had technology to kick in with you to make sure that this integrity part is being done right. So I think fundamentally firms and partners need to sit down and say, maybe you shouldn't have 150 partners. You shouldn't have X millions of dollars, dirham, or whatever you want of revenue generation a year. And you shouldn't be earning that much money. Bring it back. Audit business was the most stable business in for anybody's career.
It's called bread and butter for everyone.
Exactly. So here again, I think there should be a little bit look at how we run that business and how we attract the people. But I think the firms are in that vicious cycle. For me to attract the better partners, this is how much I need to pay them. For me to be able to afford them to pay that much, this is much revenue we need to bring.
But don't you think it's getting worse rather than better, that this pressure? And a second point, which I was, you mentioned audit, I was thinking about the PwC case in Australia, all public news, where the practice got sold for $1. My question, that's nothing to do with audit. That was pure play example of what I don't want to name it, what, but we know what it was. And a lot of examples may not be related to audit. So there are ethical issues which are, either it's that the news is so much today that you get to see more or you get to hear more. Maybe the companies have become so large that the penalties and the scale has become larger. Then maybe 20 years the scale was lower and it didn't get the headlines. How do you see this? I mean, and like you said, they're very well managed firms, but with the increasing trend, and my question goes back to, again, are they too big to fail?
I see your point. I see your point. As you're growing, you have less and less control, if you will. But I never look at controls in a traditional sense, to be honest with you. It's not about control for me. It's about building the trust. Would you have issues today in your businesses? And you know, the two best airlines in the world, manufacturers, they have their issues, and so that's completely offline. But yeah, I mean, you know, healthcare, we have a lot of growth is a must. Growth should happen. People who are leading these businesses or firms, for that matter, they're extremely smart people and they know what they're doing. I don't believe too big to fail is the issue here in the Big Four example. As much as, like I said, many people would want you to say, yes, it's too big, too big. Let's have a lot more smaller boutique firms. And look, there is a tremendous opportunity for smaller boutique firms, and we've seen them. And I see them personally because they come a lot to the region. And I have the honor to work with a lot of them because our region right now is searching for newer talent, more innovative talent, a talent that can sit with you and relate to you and spend the time with you in a completely different way, but also can deliver equal or better results at a more economical approach. So yes, there is a tremendous amount of opportunity because the transformation, look, particularly in our region and even globally today, you know, with AI, I mean, transformation is happening everywhere, you know, in China, in the US, in India is incredible across all the different regions in India. Here in our region in the Middle East is unbelievable. How quickly and how aggressively and how well we are growing and building and developing our transformational projects.
More at a philosophical level, I'm just trying to think from your case and from your experience in KPMG, what is the right time to understand and know when a leader should step aside? It's very important because today people don't want to give up their position of power across levels, and maybe not limited to professional services firm. Let's talk across level. When is the right time to step aside where you think whatever may be happening, it's a very tough thing to do because giving up power may be the toughest thing to do. What do you think at more at a philosophical level it should be?
Look, I understand the questions. And I understand people get attached to what they're doing and to the position that they are supposed to be serving at. But if the guy before you lasted forever, you wouldn't have had it. Okay, so again, I disagree with that kind of mindset. You can call me naive if you want, but really, governing this situation, you should not be more than 2 terms, 4 or 5 years each. 10 years is a bit too many, to be honest with you.
It's like US president, 2 terms.
US president,
2
2
terms
without getting into politics, yes. But look, there'll never be enough time to do all what you want to do, and you always believe you are the best person doing it. But you have to have clarity, because when you got that job and how you won that election or selection or nomination for that matter, you said, I'm going to put the firm interest in front of my interest in anyone's interest. And when you are serving your interest to protect yourself, then you're not deemed correctly for the job anymore, to be honest with you. So you have to look and say, am I serving my firm? Am I serving the community? Am I serving the people? And if you're not, and you shouldn't be more than 8 years, you shouldn't be more than 4 or 5 or 6 years, to be honest with you. Okay? And today CEOs are executive, but they're not working on the day-to-day matters. If they're working on the day-to-day matters, they're doing the wrong job. They should be working on the vision of the organization on the next 5 years. They should be working on the branding of the organization. And how it get executed, it really doesn't matter. So when you have a new guy faster, new person, I should say, faster, it allows to renovate those ideas. And I think what you came up with is something people could use, and they continue to using. And I've seen it in my own experience. The strategy that we put continues. And I'm not taking credit for what's being done now or what was done yesterday, but these are things that are common sense. They make sense. Right investment, you need to continue with them. So yes, I think executives should not continue in their positions.
What's been your biggest learning, I would say, from this 2022 turmoil? I mean, what coming out of it makes you stronger, but what's been your biggest learning? And do you regret anything you did right
There was
or
a
wrong?
lot of learnings, tremendous amount of learnings. And, look, you're asking me these questions and there are a lot of answers. Learning for what? Learning to defend myself, learning to defend my firm, learning to defend my client, learning to defend the people of the firm, or learning to defend the community. Okay, there's a lot of learnings here. How you want to position that learning. Again, I'm a firm believer that the learning is your integrity and your network are your biggest assets. You put your integrity and you build your network, and that's what stays with you and travels with you, and sometimes travels faster than your technical knowledge and your performance and what you've done.
So, just trying to understand a viewpoint, I just want yours. Today, the professional services firms are going through a consolidation, right? We're seeing huge number of mergers in the US, the region. We're seeing a lot of private equity capital coming into historically, which was never there, right? Outside money. Because when private equity comes to you, then your targets increase. There's a push to make more money. Does client interest get harmed or not? Question mark. I foresee a trend where all these companies will get listed eventually, obviously, how the trend is. How do you see this in a professional services industry, which is historically never been, it's never been attuned to taking outside capital, right? And capital which wants faster and bigger returns, because that's the job of a private equity. So how do you see that as?
I think it's an incredible opportunity. I think it's great. But again, you have to look at the cultures of the firms and the speed of how you do this. What value beside money the private equity firm is bringing? What are the terms and conditions that they're putting on the structure of the firm? But today, look, the financial gaps between the big four or the firms is huge. And when you have a firm making 80 billion and a firm making about 40 billion, the amount of money being spent on research and development between the two firms is huge, a huge difference. So I believe the 80 billion will be able to grow and invest and innovate a lot faster than the 40 billion. So
What
maybe
happens to a
maybe
10
the
billion firm
$50 billion firm need to think, and the $50 billion firm almost thought about 2 years ago
of going for an
to go
IPO?
through that process. But again, personal interest, different region, different view, retired
Correct.
partners, um, different bureaucracies comes in the way of growth, and you have to take an account for that. I thought that would have made that firm a completely different firm.
I thought 100 billion firm it would be because the amount of
But it's easy for us, you and me, and particularly for me to say, and we did not see it at that level. Now we're hearing almost in the second tier of firms, they're doing this,
correct.
and hopefully that will be successful. I have the tendency to believe that it will be successful because they're slightly smaller, less exposure, and they need to play that catch up with the big four to achieve a faster ability to invest in their business.
One last question. If you could leave one principle with our viewers, with people who are watching that will matter no matter how much the world changes. In this today's AI world, technological world, one principle that stays, what would that be?
Time. You own the time. The time is all yours. Take your time to make sure that you do good at whatever you're doing. Don't rush through situations. Make sure you are able to take your time to listen to people. Communicate what you need to communicate. Communicate again, and communicate one more time. And that requires time because we're different people. And our ability to understand, comprehend, believe, follow, and get motivated is different. And you want to make sure that people are all at decent level of understanding what being said. So I think my advice is for organization to move at the speed that is required and desired, but also make sure that they're giving enough time to do what they need to do and do it well.
Few rapid fire questions. Best advice you've ever got?
Setbacks are not failures. You pick up, you learn, and you keep moving, and you move at a fast speed.
A leader you admire, dead or alive?
This is almost a continuation of your first questions. Because His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid is a person that I've admired and learned a lot from by witnessing how he transformed the country and how Dubai and the UAE became an incredible place where everybody wants to come in. And if you read in his book, and I read it often and frequently, My Life, he taught us how to, again, that failure is part of what you do. And it's really, speed is important, communication is important, being on the ground, understanding what's happening with everyone is important. And the speed of where you get up and fix it and move forward is important. Innovation is important. This is, again, an incredible book that I read often and often and go back to.
One habit which keeps you grounded?
Look, traditionally, my kids keep me grounded. My wife keep me grounded. A lot of people keep me grounded. Riding horses, you asked me, that was the first question, keep me grounded. And I was telling you before we started that I fell last year and I broke 6 ribs. And look, a lot of things keep you grounded, but you have to be honest with yourself and understand that opportunities are there and life is great, and you've done a fantastic work over the past 40 years, and keep the hope, keep smiling, and keep serving the community. One of the things I enjoy the most today is what keep me grounded is working with the community, particularly with people of determinations. And you see the amount of drive that they have. And then you see all the things that you have, and you say, how could I give more?
One lesson life has taught you the hard way.
One
Lesson
that,
life has taught you the hard way.
God, many lessons. Again, many lessons are the hard way. But
One
again,
which comes to your mind.
one that comes to my mind. Look, again, I've been very fortunate, but is don't refuse offers that are strange to you. Okay, so things come to you in different packages, and you have to keep an open mind. Sometimes they may not appear as great as they are. Be an open-minded individual. Accept them, evaluate them, and move away from them or with them. So again, being an open mind, and every time you close your mind, you're closing a lot of doors.
I would say for young leaders, one or two principles you wish someone had taught you, which you didn't, and over a period you've learned, what would that be?
Gosh, I thought I knew it all, but look, is nothing that I did not learn. But I think something I will emphasize is, look, build your network, communicate. Honesty is the only policy. Integrity.
You think this is more bookish or realistic?
It is very realistic, and these are the pillars of how I grew up and managed my life. And I'll tell you, today I will tell the young people one thing: learn, 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 and learn more, because we talk about upskilling, and these young folks, they are just been upskilled right now. And if you stay for a year or two without learning, you're stale, you're behind. Yeah. So keep learning, have a super positive attitude, almost to a point where it's sick positive attitude. You have to have a positive attitude. You have to get up, you have to smile.
Thank you so much, Nader. Really, really fun interacting with you. I have lots of learning. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, and I wish you all the best with what you're doing. I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, and really interesting topics and great learning on my part from you. So thank you.
Thank you so much.